Well, this is the scene outside court in New York City. We're about 30 minutes away from the hush money trial resuming after Friday's dramatic and tearful testimony from Donald Trump's former spokeswoman, Hope Hicks. It's 9 a.m. here in Atlanta. I'm Lynda Kinkade and for my colleague Becky Anderson, and this is Connect the World. Also happening this hour, civilians panicking as the IDF orders an evacuation as part of Rafah. French President Emmanuel Macron welcoming China's Xi Jinping in Paris. And we are hours away from the launch of Boeing's Starliner spacecraft with 2 NASA astronauts on board. We're terrified and in a state of panic. That is how a CNN worker in Eastern Rafah is describing the civilian population there after Israel ordered them to evacuate. Israel's military says it will launch a, quote, limited-scale operation in that part of the city to root out Hamas militants. But there's still no indication of exactly when that will happen. Adding to the fear today, this massive plume of smoke from an Israeli airstrike in Eastern Rafah. Israel has been staging airstrikes in the city for months. Gaza officials report more than 26 deaths there overnight, including children. Well, the IDF dropped leaflets urging civilians to move into an area outside of Rafah. A spokesperson for the UN Relief Works Agency says it's a beach area that is not quite suitable for habitation. Well, all of this while negotiations for a ceasefire are stalled, but not over. Our Jeremy Diamond is connecting us from Jerusalem. Our Arlette Saez is at the White House. Good to have you both with us. I want to start with you first, Jeremy. Given that we've got 100,000 people or so in part of Rafah that have been asked to evacuate, we've seen this leaflet drop, red and blue leaflets, and these are people that have already been displaced multiple times, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The majority of the folks who are currently living in Rafah, more than 1 million people, many of them have been displaced multiple times, fleeing to that city as kind of a last refuge from this ongoing war in Gaza. But that refuge is about to be disrupted as the Israeli military begins dropping leaflets on a portion of Eastern Rafah where about 100,000 civilians are currently living, directing them to move north towards what the Israeli military has described as an expanded humanitarian zone in Al-Mawasi, as well as in western Khan Yunis, where they say that they have fixed a main water line. They have brought in additional tents, food, water, medicine. Field hospitals are being set up as well. We don't have specific numbers from the Israeli military yet on that humanitarian setup in that area. And so major questions still loom about whether or not that zone is going to be adequate for the number of people who could quickly be flooding north in fear based off of these evacuation warnings. We know that in addition to the 100,000 people who have been directed to evacuate, people in other parts of Rafah are also starting to flee, and that is the major concern from humanitarian aid officials. If there is a broader sense of panic that spreads throughout that city of Rafah, where more than 1 million people are currently living, those humanitarian zones north of Rafah could very, very quickly be overwhelmed. The Israeli military says that this is a, quote, limited scale operation, but make no mistake, these evacuation orders are without a doubt the early stages for a ground offensive into that southern city. And it is all happening, Lynda, as these negotiations between Israel and Hamas appear to have stalled over the weekend. There was a lot of optimism that an agreement on this new Egyptian framework could be reached, but 2 Israeli sources telling me that the talks are now stalled over what the major sticking point, which is Hamas's continued demands that any ceasefire agreement must include an Israeli commitment to end the war in Gaza altogether. That is something that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has refused to agree to so far. And so for now, those talks stalled, although not dead altogether. The CIA Director Bill Burns is indeed in Doha, Qatar this week, and those negotiations are still ongoing.
All right, Jeremy, staying across the door from Jerusalem, just stand by for us because I do want to go to Arlette Saez about this ammunition pause. We understand that the Biden administration has paused this U.S.-made ammunition that was meant to be going to Israel. Do we know whether this was a logistics issue or whether they're sending a more serious message ahead of this potential offensive in Rafah?
Well, Lynda, the Biden administration has yet to detail exactly why there was a pause in this U.S.-made ammunition that was intended to go to Israel, but was paused last week. Now, a source familiar with the matter said that this does not have anything to do with this potential ground operation Israel could conduct in Rafah, and that it would not impact aid shipments going forward. A bit earlier today, Senator Chris Coons, a key member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, did suggest that it was a logistical issue, but it certainly could raise concerns about whether the U.S. is trying to send some type of message to Israel as they are weighing this operation into Rafah. It comes as the administration has been warning for weeks now that Israel must have a plan in place to ensure the safety and evacuation of the more than 1.4 million Palestinians in that area. President Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about 8 days ago, where he made clear his position when it comes to Rafah. U.S. officials have been in constant communication with the Israelis about these plans for dealing with civilians in Rafah. That includes conversations just last week where the Israelis briefed the Biden administration on their thinking relating to the evacuation of Rafah. Now, sources at the time told us that so far they had not presented a final plan for how they would evacuate all of these citizens, and also hadn't shared exactly what an operation would look like. But the White House has viewed a potential operation in Rafah with great concern, especially at a time when the president's also facing domestic pressure here at home, with many in his Democratic Party frustrated with his handling of the conflict between Israel and Hamas. So we will see if the White House gives some further explanation as the day progresses as to why they paused that shipment of ammunition, but they are watching these latest moves from Israel relating to evacuating civilians in Eastern Rafah very, very closely.
All right, we will come back to you if there is an update on that ammunition. Good to have you with us, Arlette Saez, outside the White House. Jeremy Dummett for us in Jerusalem. Thanks very much.